everyone. Just wanted to give you guys a quick content/trigger warning. This episode of Lovecraft Country Bumpkin discusses topics related to violence, gore, homophobia, and hate crimes.
Welcome to Lovecraft Country Bumpkin, y'all. We're your hosts, Klara,
Tori,
and LaTara.
We'll be here every week to chat about the show, its themes, its best moments, and anything else that gave us nightmares.
In an effort to save Dee, who's been cursed by the evil twins, Atticus, Letty, and Montrose returned to Tulsa, Oklahoma in 1921 on the eve of the Tulsa Massacre to recover the Book of Names before it burns down with Atticus's mother's home. There they struggle to survive not only the riots, but Montrose's traumatic confrontation with the terrible events of that night. Guys, we're getting down to the wire. This is episode 9 of 10.
Y'all, this episode, I feel like this is kind of dumb to say because I feel like, stuff got real in every episode. But this episode, y'all know, it took me out. This one was definitely a lot.
Yeah, I feel like we say that every episode.
Yeah, because every episode gets more a lot. Episode before
it becomes more every time.
Yes. Yeah.
I think you're definitely right that the quality of this was different, though. Genre-wise, we've been dividing up every episode by genre. This was a time travel movie.
Yeah. Yeah.
But definitely not in the way that we usually experience it, I think. Because 100%. This one was they felt so powerless in this case. They were really dedicated to the idea of making sure nothing changed because, otherwise the future where they could go back to the past wouldn't happen. And they would lose all of the chances that they have to save themselves, save, baby George, who hasn't even been born yet. But that made it all the more heartbreaking because of this terrible event, that they are just not only powerless to stop, but Letty had to ask Atticus's grandmother to participate. She had to make that choice for everyone in that house. I'm sorry, y'all. This got really deep, immediately.
No, it's okay. I think the episode kind of demands it in a way. You're right, because you're right. It's a time travel episode. But when I think time travel, I think Back to the Future. I think
Marty McFly.
Right. I think adventure. I think what was it, the Avengers movie? They did a time travel situation. But it's always it's they go back in the past, but it's sometimes dangerous things happen, but fun things happen too. And this was just not that.
Yeah. They go to the past to make a better future, but here, they were only able to take something from this moment that wouldn't be missed. They weren't able to change anything in the past, only in the future.
It makes me think of that joke I see every now on the internet that says only white people or men would want to go back in time if they could travel anywhere in time,
because it sucked for the rest of us back then.
It really sucked. Really sucked.
But I guess it's interesting to think of this as a time travel episode because it's clearly what it is, but I didn't really necessarily make that as a genre connection. And I think it's partially because the interaction with the past is so different and has so many different temporal valences in ways that are found in time travel genres, the considerations of the butterfly effect and everything, which is why they can't touch anything in the past. But for specifically watching the episode through Montrose's eyes or or becoming closely aligned with Montrose's perspective as viewers ourselves, to know that he is a grown man having to experience one of the most horrifying things to have ever happened twice, and to know that he will see himself as a child experiencing these events, and to know that he as an adult will not be able to intervene on behalf of those he loves.
I honestly, I did have a moment, when he was drinking whatever Uncle George's concoction was in the mason jar. Gasoline, girl. I loved that. I was something about this, this one brother, he's look, George is dead. I'm finna down this because I need this. But I think like I honestly kind of wonder, like there were a few times I was like, can't y'all be like a little nicer to him? Like, you know what the Tulsa Massacre was. Like the fact that he lived through it, like he was a kid. Like, I mean, obviously, you know, Tick and Letty, I assume wouldn't have known details about Montrose's experience because it seemed like he was a lot of things he was telling Tick throughout the episode, it seemed like Tick was learning for the first time. So I would assume they wouldn't know details, but still, like, you know, he lived through a massacre. Like, it's gonna suck to go back. So that was like just how like last episode we were like, how come, like, we felt like it was a little bit strange that Letty wasn't more responsive to Dee, who was clearly in distress. This was a moment where I was like, you know, y'all don't have any questions about why? He's like, yeah, this is the perfect time to get very drunk. So, like, I don't know.
It's been a running theme on this show, like how trauma and horror can drive people apart as well as driving people together. And just like how often the characters have disagreed on courses of action, how Montrose treated Letty whenever he realized that she had taken immunity for herself.
Yeah. I forgot. Was that this episode too?
So many things have happened.
Oh my goodness. So many things
happened last episode. So many things happened.
And the one before, like,
y'all remember the one before? I think Tori, your comment about trauma being like a bringing together and also a divisive thing is very apt. And I think it's like, in thinking about like connecting like people's maybe not being as sensitive to kind of like the traumas from Montrose and Letty's not being as sensitive to Dee, I think is an interesting thing to kind of like trace towards the end of the season as we're like barreling towards something crazy. And like what that like unraveling or like the not or like the less or the kind of like the decreased amount of sensitivity on part of our characters that we have thought to be more sensitive before, I think is maybe an interesting thing to trace a little bit.
I agree. Because, like, do you remember at the beginning of this episode when they were, like, kind of playing the blame game, right? And, like, this is, like, our team now, right? This is, like, they are all firmly, like, headed towards this same climax together. We assume they want the same outcomes or hope for similar outcomes from whatever this climax is. And I think I'm really glad you like pointed that out, Tori, in terms of like how trauma also drives people apart, because I feel like there was a point at which they seem to be getting closer to each other each episode, emotionally at least, and now I feel like not that they're getting further apart, because I do still see that closeness happening, but it's almost like when you're so close to someone, like when you're like close to like your sibling, and because you're so close to them and you love them so much, you also kind of want to punch them in the face sometimes.
Yeah, it's like we are against so many powerful forces. How can you handle this wrong? Like, how can you risk us like this? Like, whenever anyone goes lone wolf, it threatens everyone, and they're all going lone wolf. It's not like we have a single person to blame in that respect. They are all doing questionable things.
And they have, because the thing is, they do have different it's like things have changed, things have happened which have necessarily changed priorities. I'm thinking like specifically like Letty getting pregnant, but then also like Tick having all these revelations about his, like, you know, Montrose maybe not being his real dad. And then like, I mean, like, you know, our characters are learning new things that they also have to, that also affect their decision making and like their prioritization of the group's concerns in relation to their individual concerns as well. And really, I mean, like, I mean, Letty being pregnant is like obviously a huge thing for her, you know, becoming a mom, and Tick's becoming a dad, and Montrose is gonna be becoming a grandpa, and it's like babies change everything. No. Like that when she revealed she was pregnant, I was like, oh, bro, like whatever like the to-do list was before, like
out the window.
Like it reorders, you know, like that's what babies do. They reorder families.
Literally.
Yeah.
New generation. New like T0. Yeah, that's a great point, LaTara.
I think family was a really big deal in this episode. So I get the feeling that we're going to talk about that quite a bit when we get into our Bummy Awards here in a second. So these are our awards that we give to the most outstanding thing in the show for us. So for you guys, who won the episode today?
I can go first. So I already talked a little bit about Montrose and Tick. And so I cheated a little with my Bunny Awards. I put both of them. I put Montrose / Tick. Just because really I have found myself appreciating more and more as the show goes on, the way that the show reveals more details of their background and or particularly Montrose's background and their relationship as father and son, and then complicating it with that Montrose might not even be Tick's dad, and Montrose is like, but that means I chose to be your dad. And there were multiple scenes throughout this episode, like thinking about like how Tick had before said, "No, we're done after this," but then as he went through the day with Montrose and like saw where Montrose was coming from and like the most traumatic events of Montrose's life, and it was you could almost see gradually that moment of like, I'm done with you. It's like that's not that's no longer the case. And I think in particular, when Tick was talking to Montrose about not saving Thomas, thinking of like, if you save him, like you might not end up with my mom, and then like I won't exist. And
I can't bring you here to save him.
Yeah, exactly. Right. This is even what we're here to do. And then Montrose like watched Thomas get shot again. And Tick like had to like support him through that, or like didn't have to, but he did. He like so I don't know. I just feel like a lot of bonds were built between them in this episode, even as the episode revealed things which could have torn them apart, and maybe would have.
Yeah, I feel like this is the most extreme version ever of that moment, kind of in the transition from childhood to adulthood, and like the transition from having a parent-child relationship to having a more egalitarian relationship. That moment where you recognize your parent as a person instead of as just your parent. This is like the most extreme version of that ever, because he got to see like, oh, he didn't just beat me, he was beaten.
I think like another way that I'm thinking about Montrose and Tick is that the terms of their father-son relationship changed. Whereas before, like it seemed to me that they were bound together by like a sense of like biological family and biological fatherhood. And then throughout this specifically in this episode, kind of like that biological bond is challenged a little bit. We don't know for sure exactly, neither does Montrose, whether he or George is Tick's father. But the conversation between Montrose and Tick before Tick takes a baseball bat to some white supremacists.
Love to see it.
And he says, like, I chose over and over and over again to be your father because I needed to be your father. I think, again, like that changes the terms of like what fatherhood means. In complex ways, Montrose's desire for fatherhood, like, men have sons, and it's ties to his like anxieties about his queerness, or like part of the conversation too. But the definitions of the terms of fatherhood, parentage, I think were changed in this episode in really very rough and dramatic ways.
Yeah. I think like kind of like building on your point, Klara, I think the show has done like sort of thematically has done like asked us to ask a lot of questions about inheritance and in genealogy. Like I was like going all the way back to the first episode in terms of like Tick finding out that him and Christina are cousins, which still cracks me up. But I like both fatherhood and like parenthood and like and family, and really like the idea of like passing down or passing on, and both genetically as well as in terms of like cyclical trauma, right? Thinking about like not Tick, Montrose, and like how you mentioned earlier, Tori, like finding out that Montrose was abused by his father too.
I think too, this relates to my winner of the episode, so maybe I'll go ahead and dive into that here. For me, Hippolyta won. Yes, she is a winner. She is a queen. I loved, this is like the culmination of her decision a couple episodes ago to come back for D, you know, like her decision to kind of like break that cycle, her decision to be there in Dee's life to teach her not to shrink herself, you know, to be there. And like that, a big adventure in her life, you know, something that she wants to name herself as Dee's mom, which I think is similar to how Montrose named himself Atticus's father before Atticus existed, like before he knew that he would ever have a son. He named himself the father of a son. I love it. And also, to me, Hippolyta was a standout in this episode, even though she wasn't there very much. One, for the dope blue hair that she ended up with at the end, which calls back to Dee's comic, which is awesome. Yes. But also, like, one last thing I want to mention about Hippolyta is this episode, none of the magic belonged to Christina, which was awesome. This time, it was all in the hands of our team. And they were the ones in charge, and they were the ones, like, managing, you know, the future for themselves instead of having it doled out for them in, like, teaspoonfuls by Christina as it suited her, as she could get something from it. So I loved seeing that, like, power shift towards our heroes here.
Yeah.
And it being, like, self-contained.
Yeah. And it makes me optimistic for the upcoming episode that they can stand up to the formidable forces that they're going to confront. So
she was always formidable, always. And I have loved her this entire series. I loved that she knew they were lying to her and was not going to let them off the hook for lying to her. But I'm very interested to see what other things Hippolyta has learned and have brought back with her in her journeys as a traveler.
True.
I agree.
I'm interested to see what she does. Episode 10 is going to be wild, y'all.
My winner of this episode is a little bit less maybe like outwardly empowering or encouraging, but maybe one could have that reading. But it's it's Tick's grandmother in the when we time travel back into 1921, who gives Letty the book of names in the end, and she is the matriarch of this family, and she has been told herself through her family line to protect this book. And obviously, talking about, like, Tick's grandmother is really tragic and really horrible, and the kind of the way that the TV show portrayed her death to be really horrible and really hard to watch. But as a character for this episode, for her to be the deliverer of a lot of things, I think to be an incredible thing to watch, for her to be the deliverer of the book to Letty, and to her to kind of occupy this place in Tick's family, where everything kind of, like, comes together, and some loose ends are tied, is, I think, a really cool bit of writing, to put it very mildly, for the episode. Just, I think the role that she fits in kind of the storytelling of the entire series, maybe is a more neat way to put it, what I'm trying to circle around, to be really incredible.
Yeah. It's like this moment that we never saw, like, because this was in the past the whole time. She was allowing this to happen the whole time. She was enabling our heroes to save themselves, save baby George, you know, save the future, prevent Christina from whatever the heck it is.
Man, what?
And it feeds pretty. I think it'll feed into like my standout scene.
Yeah.
You know, that Tick's grandmother won the episode for me, but the scene that stands out the most for me in this episode, not because it was enjoyable to watch by any means, but the scene where she and Letty are praying together as the house is burning down, and the camera and the filmmaking decisions to turn the camera onto the burning body and onto their hands as they're holding holding their hands together to pray. Stands out because it's horrible to watch. It's really tragic. It makes many historical traumas explicit.
Yeah, for sure.
But as a non-religious person, I did find the power of the moment of praying together to be quite potent, and something to take away with.
Yeah, I mean, I was watching that and I was like, Letty, the portal, Letty, the time, you know, but like that was just part of me, and the rest of me was like, no, like,
yes,
as horrible as this is, like, Letty, you asked her to stay here and burn. Like, you have to witness
you
this.
Have to, yeah.
We have to witness this. Like,
yeah.
As a nation, we have to like, own up to the fact that this is happening, that this happened, that it's still happening. Like,
It was, well, definitely told y'all. It was a very, very hard scene to watch. I agree that Letty had to stay. This was a sacrifice that this incredible, incredible woman took on to choose, like, to die, to choose to die to save your family or to save your descendants is one thing, but to choose to die in such a horrible, painful way, and to choose that with your eyes wide open, and to know what you are choosing. When she asked Letty to stay and to hold her hand with her, she was, I read it like as many things, but one of them was like, I don't want to die alone. I don't want to die this horrible way alone. All I have now to comfort me is another human and God. And I'm going to ask you to share that with me as I leave. Because that's all I have. And I agree that we had to watch it, even though it was absolutely awful. I sobbed the entire time, like, to our like listeners and viewers. Like, I am a huge crybaby. I'm talking gut wrenching sobs. I do not like watching violent or gory scenes because they stay with me. I'm the sort of person who's a visual learner, so once I see it, and I see it repeatedly for much, much too long. So that was a hard thing to make myself sit through, and I was low-key kind of mad after. I was like, how dare y'all make me feel all these things? But I agree with you, Tori, in that it was necessary, because I think there are people in Tulsa in 1921 and today in 2020 across this country that are okay with the kind of world wherein an old Black woman can burn to death in her home, because a bunch of white people got mad that these affluent Black folk had the nerve to live and be prosperous and
to exist
and to exist and to exist perfectly okay in their Blackness. And there are people who think that the sort of world we're in, those Black people should be punished and burned and shot and lynched and whatever else is the world that we should live in. And that is what that world costs, right? Like even if, we know this show it's a construction, like these are fake characters, but there are, I think I find myself returning to Toni Morrison's formulation of the difference between fact and truth in her essay, the Site of Memory, where she talks about how, as a writer, she writes things that are not fact so she can reveal things to the reader that are true. Or that like pushes the reader to experience things that are truth, even if it's through fictional works and fictional characters. And perhaps Tick's grandmother is not real, but there were Black people who were literally set on fire while white people cheered. Right? There are Black people who, like, had their businesses and their homes burned, and there were hundreds of people who died in the, the Tulsa Massacre. And even if none of them were Tick's grandmother, like some of them burned, and some of them died of smoke inhalation, and some of them were shot, and some of them like had entire buildings crumble on top of them, and they were crushed to death. Like that is what this world costs, right? That you watch an old Black woman die horribly, hoping that it ensures a world where maybe her children don't die the way that she did.
Thank you for bringing up that the difference between truth and fact here, because I think Lovecraft Country does such a good job, again, by showing us that body, by relentlessly following Montrose through the worst day of his life. Like my standout scene was the one where he's standing in that theater looking out the window and the portal snaps shut, and you just realize he's stuck there in his worst nightmare forever. Like if they can't get that portal back open, he's never going home. I think that this episode did such a good job of not letting us flinch where we want to flinch away. So I really appreciated that about this episode, even as, you know, I found it disturbing, even as I found it upsetting. I think they really like gritted their teeth and looked straight at something that does not want to be seen. So.
And that many people don't want to see, you know.
Which is a complicated, like, you know, what the representation of racialized trauma does. Like, Toni Morrison asks us to stare directly into the face of horror when she writes Beloved. A scholar that we work with that we know is Saidiya Herman, who in her first book explicitly says not to recreate the most explicit torturous scene of slavery.
Yeah.
And this is also relevant to our conversations about the circulation of like lynching photographs,
as well as
videos, and it being a difficult and not easy conversation to have about what it means to kind of consume, maybe, or to the differences between consumption and witness.
And witnessing,
and witnessing, I think, is a difficult line to draw.
It's like publicizing versus like raising awareness, right? Like.
Yeah, and exactly, because there is, because like the thing is, I'm so glad you put it that way, Klara. Like the difference between consuming and witnessing. I think that because like when I think like in the scene like with their grandmother, I'm like, this is something we have to witness. And that Letty, I will say, I felt so sad for Letty. Like I can't imagine.
Like, how do you live with yourself after you ask somebody to sit there and burn to death? Like, so sorry. Like the difference between witnessing and consuming. You're right. It's like because there is a difference, and it's like it's so hard to delineate a huge one. And so it's hard. I think particularly when we think about the ways that this show asked us as watchers, as viewers of the show, to reflect on how the show connects to our real life. I think that is definitely something that I think they want us to think about in terms of like the power of imagery that is not only like seen once but reproduced and therefore and repopulated like in multiple forms and then consumed almost, right? So it's like, is it in the frequency? Is it in the intent? Is it in the intent of, in terms of, I'm asking about the difference between witnessing and consuming. Is it in the intent of the viewer? Is it the intent of the one creating the image or video or whatever that is seen and re-seen over and over again? Is it in the dissemination of that video to a population, or just in the creation of it and its existence? And I don't know the answers to any of these questions, but it's worth asking.
it's 100% worth asking. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Agreed. Highly recommend reading The Sight of Memory.
It's a beautiful essay.
Well, LaTara, what was your standout scene then today?
My standout scene was, so we're going to take it back to something maybe slightly more hopeful in tone. And for me, deeply, deeply satisfying. My standout scene was Tick with his baseball bat. Like, when Tick put together the pieces and Watch was like, oh yeah, a stranger showed up, which I'm always like, so when Tick grew up, you didn't look at him and be like, stranger.
Hang on a second.
Stranger. But I guess not. He probably like forgot the stranger's face. I mean, it's nighttime. Like, they're stressed.
We'll give him a pass.
Like,
He
just saw someone he loves get shot. Right. Like, I mean, Montrose went through a lot that day. So I'm going to chill on him right now. But when Tick showed up with that bat and went swinging, I said, well, amen. Amen. This is a beautiful. And then at the end, when like that last white guy ran away, I was like, yes. He was like, I don't want these problems. You're right. You don't want these problems. Go on and run. I thought that was amazing. And then when Tick went on and set the line, what is it? I got you.
I got you, kid.
I got you, kid. I was like,
to his father.
To his father. And then just like waltzed off. Like, I handled that. That was pretty great.
That was pretty great. All right, let's go ahead and move on to our Cross Country Award. The Cross Country Award is the Bummy Award that we give to the theme from Lovecraft Country, which is the most relevant still today in our country. And for mine, I wanted to make sure that this did not get lost in the sauce. Do you guys remember the police captain's gross body?
Oh, unfortunately, I do, Tori.
Oh. I'm sorry to bring this back up, but we could not talk about this. His weird, gross body.
Nasty.
I'm not gonna, explicitly spoil anything for y'all here, but very reminiscent of another piece of horror literature created by Jordan Peele, one of the executive producers of this show. Police Captain apparently has been like regenerating his body or like replenishing his body by like Frankensteining black people into his body, which is super messed up, but also I felt like a very clear metaphor of police brutality and how like white society, but also the police in particular, are built upon the exploitation of black bodies and the punishment, the murder of black bodies. So
and control.
That too.
Yeah, like
and use, right?
And use, absolutely.
Also, can we talk about Christina there for a second? Like, not to derail us entirely, but like Christina was at the house and was like, only the police captain can take the spell off of D, but he's dead, so I guess we can never take the spell off of D. This is my Christina voice.
Yes, with the shade. Love it.
And
drag her, Tori.
Drag her, yes.
She shows up at this police station, finds the boy alive, and is not like, take the spell off of D. No, she just like sits there and watches him die again.
I'm gonna watch you die.
Yeah. I'm like, hello? So
right? Like, ma'am, you could have did something real different right now.
She really could have. To me, like, it's not shocking because I know Christina's a snake, but it just reinforced to me that she's not on their team. She's not on their team. And it doesn't matter what she feels about Ruby. Ruby is not in control like she thinks she is. This is not a situation that she can handle. I thought this moment spoke to that.
Every time Christina does something snaky, I am still surprised.
Somehow.
Like every episode, I'm like, girl,
what?
I thought she liked Ruby.
Shocked Pikachu face.
I thought she wanted to help them. She is super slinky. She is super slinky.
Like, right? Like, I don't, it's something about like, cause you know how like when you look at people's body language And I mean, she's like, I do think like she moves gracefully, and I think that she like stands very gracefully, and I do think there is something graceful of like when you watch a snake like slithering along the ground, like the way they just with no arms and legs, and like how did you move like that? But whatever. So it's like there's something about her that is eerie, and also obviously beautiful, but beautiful in a way that like makes my like heart go cold because I feel like she's plotting many things, which of course she is.
Yeah, your feeling is correct. She is plotting many things.
All the things. All the things. Like, you're right. I hope Ruby does not end up too hurt. Is I think my hope because I feel like Christina backstabbing her is likely to happen.
Inevitable, almost. Ugh.
My cross country award. I had a hard time picking one for this episode. But I think it's maybe like, not to like fully like reify and sanctify motherhood, or fetishize motherhood. I will reify it, but not to like fetishize motherhood or anything, or maybe even like single motherhood, which we all know is very difficult. But I think my cross country award for this episode is, I think, just like maybe a motherhood. Thinking of like in like Hippolyta's Hippolyta being a mom to Dee and really affirming ways to be really incredible. And then also kind of like Tick's grandmother, and kind of like the matrilineal line that's obviously being present. All
the way from Hannah.
Yeah. All the way from Hannah, all down to George. But, and in terms of like it being a cross-country award, I don't know, I think mothers are so incredible.
Yeah, I mean, we talked a lot about family today. I think like this is a really good cross-country award for this episode.
I agree. So for mine, I think I found this episode to be hard to get through, and I had like a very strong emotional reaction, partially because we're in midterm season and we're grad students, and so I'm low key in shambles, like just struggling. We're all struggling.
It's hard in Ann Arbor.
It's hard. It is. Woo. Okay, and we're all teaching. Like it's a lot. So I'm saying that to preface that I do realize that my very intense emotional reactions may partially be because of my actual life. But I think a part of it was this show kind of hits multiple soft spots, and I think for me one of the things when I think about what Tulsa was before this neighborhood of Tulsa, is it Greenwood? Is that was the name of the neighborhood? I can't remember.
I don't know.
But so I like this is a neighborhood that is a middle class Black neighborhood, and then when Tick and Letty and Montrose first shows up in the neighborhood, I had this incredible reaction of just like awe and wonder because I was like, just looking at this neighborhood that's all Black, and like all these Black people who like not only like are obviously influent, right? Like they're like dressed beautifully, and there's like all the like this entire like line of buildings, and like they all are in these gorgeous Victorian homes, and like the cars and the gloves and the hats and the shoes and the bags, but also like Black kids who were just so happy. Like the scene when they were like coming in the hall of whatever building they had like jumped into, and like these two Black girls who were just like beautiful brown skin and like smiles, and like talking about like how they're mad that their like prom got canceled, and but it's like these Black kids who seem like they were genuinely okay and like being kids, like they like in this all Black community, and they just had normal everyday like worries, right? Like they thinking about like you pointed this out earlier, Tori, when we had like our little pre-conversation, but about like how Tick's mom's sister, which I'm sorry, that's terrible, I don't know the baby's name, Tick's mom's sister, when she was talking to Letty, right, like as the massacre was beginning, and the only thing she could think about was, I want to find my sister because, like I'm kind of sweet on George, and we got into a bad fight earlier, and I don't want her to be angry with me. And like imagining a world where a little Black girl, like in an all Black neighborhood, and this is
that's the worst she can imagine.
That's the worst, right? Like she can't even conceive of what's coming that night, like, because she lives a life where her biggest worry would be having a crush on her sister's boyfriend, or having the dance get canceled, or like just like normal everyday things that you want Black kids to worry about, and to be able to do so in a neighborhood where they are surrounded by Black people who just seem so genuinely comfortable and at ease and happy while living their everyday lives while being Black. Um, and I just genuinely have never seen something like that before. Um, Obviously, I have seen Black people who are affluent and happy, but I mean, I would like consider myself coming from a middle class background, but I often find that as a Black person in this country, the higher up you go in class and education and accomplishments, the wider the spaces become. Um, and so being affluent and Black, or middle class and Black, or educated and Black, or professional and Black often means you are the minority. Not always, but often. Um, and so I have never seen uh, a scene wherein it was all Black people and they were all affluent and they were all comfortable and they were all normal. And like, I just it was stunning to me. I literally, I cried a lot during this episode, but I cried a little bit there because it was one of the most beautiful things I've ever seen. And it felt almost foreign. um I picked cross country, the idea of Black children just being Black kids, right? Just playing and living and not having to watch out for like cops or for like well meaning, like gentrifying neighbors who call cops on them because they're like playing basketball or whatever. I just like where Black kids in our country just get to be kids, genuinely get to be kids. And don't like get to be kids who also have to constantly think about being Black kids. is it felt absolutely unreal, and it feels impossible. But I think there are many people who work tirelessly today who want that to be what our future looks like that I have kids, that my kids could live a life where they can be Black and happy and just be kids. Um, I think how we talked about earlier about how the Tulsa Massacre, not not riot, which always makes me so mad, is a massacre, um, was how it destroyed so many lives, right, in one night. But I read an article after watching the episode. I think it was published in Newsweek. I'm not entirely sure, but about like there are several people who were descendants of various Black families who lost property, homes, all that in the Tulsa Massacre.
Who survived the massacre?
Yep.
Mhm.
And like how they have tried to sue for reparations multiple times throughout the decades, sue the city of Tulsa. Of course, like those cases were always denied or thrown out or whatever. It never happened. They never got those reparations. But one of the arguments they made, which I thought was really excellent, was that because this was a middle class community, which means that all of these families were business owners and homeowners, right? So they owned property, they owned capital, and one of the main ways in which you build generational wealth is the things that you get in your life you pass on to your children so they can then use it as a beginning investment and build upon that, right? Once you have money, it's easier to make money, essentially. And so there were physical lives, like people actually killed, there were physical buildings destroyed, but there were actually like potential inheritances that were destroyed. So this is the generations after the Tulsa Massacre who didn't have, that home they could have inherited from their grandparents, or, like that business they could have taken over for their uncle or whatever. and how that loss has been compounded over time as well, like to this day. I think the statistic I read is that Black households in Tulsa make on average $20,000 less than white households. So that this is like the Tulsa Massacre had real concrete
$20,000 is a year of
outcomes.
mortgage payments. Yeah,
it's crazy, right? And it's like it's years later, and they still haven't recovered, haven't been able to, right? Like specifically denied opportunities that would help them to do that. So, sorry, that was a lot. Basically, I want a world wherein Black kids can be happy Black kids, and Black people whose property is like destroyed and burned can be properly compensated for that property. And I think there are people who want that world too. And that's my cross country award.
Hallelujah. Amen. All right. Yeah. Luckily for you guys, we have an extra special bonus Bummy Award today because the next episode is the last episode of this season. So we are going to introduce a final Bummy Award, which is the stuff that we are hoping to see in this final episode. So let's run it down. For me, I'm going to be completely predictable and say that what I really want to see in the last episode is a fight between Christina's Shoggoth and Atticus's Shoggoth. Because they're going back to Artem. That's where Christina's Shoggoth lives. I don't know how they're going to get
unhappy.
I don't want to see a bunch of eyes on different things, like
fighting each other. I don't know how they're going to get the street Shoggoth to the forest, but like, it better happen. Like, it just needs to happen.
It needs to happen.
That thing can dig. It's fine. It can get there.
Go to Letty's house and like go down the tunnel.
Oh, you're right. I forgot about that.
A little shortcut.
Yeah. I would be okay if they didn't have. I'm just kidding. It'd be really cool. It's just nasty. For me, stuff I want to see in the next episode is Gia to get what she deserves.
Yes,
oh my gosh.
Get hers.
She was back for like 5 minutes and then she was gone.
Yeah, like that. Like she's like definitely like a. I don't think she's a loose cannon, but she's a loose thread at least.
yeah.
She's a Chekhov's gun. That's what she is. She's like waiting to be fired.
Yeah, and the thing is, like, this show does not leave threads untied. You know, so I have high hopes that we will see her. Because she came all this way to like warn Atticus to like, you know, not die. So
here he is trying to die.
Man, someone who has done the flight from Chicago to Shanghai. Let me tell you, that is a flight that is no joke. She came all the way to Chicago.
And they got peanuts now.
They have little snacks now.
They have snacks now. Yeah, no, that's a journey, okay? Like, and I don't know. To be honest, I like her, and I feel like I agree that she deserves better than what they have currently given her. So I also hope they bring Gia back.
Yeah, I just want to see that. I just want to know what happens. I just want to see it come to something.
Yeah.
LaTara, what do you want to see in the next episode?
I really want them. I need to see what happens between Ruby and Christina. I have many questions about their relationship. The fact that they haven't hooked up as like actually themselves, like both of them themselves. I'm wondering if this is building towards that, if it's like, you know, some acknowledgement that like attraction or connection or whatever is still there, even when they're both in like their original bodies.
I totally thought they were going to kiss in this episode.
Yeah. I did too.
And then they didn't.
Man, it can't end well, but like, I'm here for it. Like, I'm still ready to watch however it ends.
It like honestly, I feel exactly the same. Like I really think that Christina is going to backstab Ruby at some point, and then it's going to be really, really sad. But I don't know. This show surprises me all the time, so we will see. I just need the resolution, whatever the resolution is. I just need it to be resolved. Yeah,
I just need it. Give me that good resolution.
Well, I hope that we see all of this and more. I think as we've said, they don't drop anything. So I'm really excited to see how all of these plot threads get woven together in hopefully exciting, sure to be upsetting ways.
Yeah.
Well, if you guys have enjoyed today's podcast or any of the previous ones, please remember to like, subscribe, and leave some comments for us so you can get this last episode of the season. This really supports us and helps us to grow our community, and we love having y'all as part of our community. So we hope that you'll share.
Thanks, y'all. And remember, the end is nigh in creepy, crawly Lovecraft country.